Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Ship It and Sip It. I'm excited to have Daniel Walsh, the founder and CEO of VeroSkills, in the studio today. Daniel, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, John. Really appreciate this.
This is an exciting chat because I feel like VeroSkills is a great platform for both learners and tutors in tech and coding to improve themselves, improve their skills, and improve their career. So let's dive into it. When did you start working on the idea?
Yeah, so I've been in the software education world for a long time now. I used to run a software services company where I built software for other companies, and I would run little kind of mini coding boot camps inside that company. And then I ran a company that I started for a number of years that was a coding boot camp where I trained about 1,000 software engineers and placed them at jobs all over the U.S. and actually a decent amount international as well. And so yeah, so really, when I was working at that company and then going through 2020, there was this, massive shift that happened where so many people had lost their job due to the pandemic. Like they were working a retail job, working a factory job, one of these jobs that literally just went away overnight due to not being able to do anything with the pandemic. And we all of a sudden, one day we thought the company was going to go out of business and we were like, what are we going to do? And then like the next day we were literally having thousands of applications pouring in because what we realized was all of the people that couldn't work anymore needed to have a skill to make money with. They needed to have a real skill. And I think there was a light bulb moment for a lot of people that was like, hey, my job is essentially only as good as the next, economic crisis or the next meltdown or the next time, the stock of my company doesn't perform well. And, so for me, that was such a light bulb reaction because we had all these thousands of people apply, but for the people that applied, there was probably only about 600 people in total that were able to come through and actually get the training. And so for all the thousands and thousands of people that applied, a small number could have actually come through and get trained. So that kind of set me on a journey and thinking like, okay, we have the technology, we have the resources to figure out a really big problem that there's a huge population of people in the world that for whatever reason can't easily access this type of learning, this type of training to get into this high earning career. And so they're blocked, they're gated out. And I just don't think the world is shifting and staying in that direction. And we need a platform that really is adapting to the way the world is changing. And so, yeah, so that kind of got me on the journey and, started trying to figure out, okay, how would that look? What would a platform look like that, overcame all the obstacles for students that they needed to have? Biggest one of which was that they didn't have to pay anything for the training to come through. That was a thing that was really near and dear to me to try and figure out, which is a very hard problem to figure out, right? Like, hey, I'm going to invent a business and nobody pays for it. It's something that investors just really want to get behind. So figuring out that business model, I think, was the biggest kind of, the biggest thing that took time.
Okay. And I guess you mentioned a lot of earlier experience with educating people in terms of coding and tech stuff, but were there any certain earlier experiences you had that made you feel like you were capable as a founder to take on this task?
Yeah, so I had done a few different startups before. This is my third startup to be a co-founder or founder of. And so I knew what I was signing up for, because the last startup I ran was a grueling, like, 4 years of like building, and then we got it to this like really good place where it was stable, but it was a heavy experience. So I knew kind of what I was signing up for with like the challenge that presented. And I feel like really, with training those 1,000 software engineers over the last 40 years, really understood the obstacles that those students were going to face to be being able to learn well. So, um, you know, understanding, okay, how do we build a platform that's actually making this learning be as available, as accessible, like getting some of the major obstacles out of the way for the learner so that they can just focus on learning really well, which I feel like a lot of traditional models are not presenting that in a good way. And so to kind of explain that maybe a little more clear, like a big one is like students, oftentimes if you're doing a class online or you're doing a class in person, you have set class times you have to show up to. You have to go to this online class where you're in that a certain hour of the day. And our lives are just incredibly busy and incredibly random at times. So, it might be that we're on our way to the class and, somebody, hits us in the back with their car, right? And, we have to get our car repaired and we can't make class. Well, now that time is totally inconvenient. And so, like, one of the obstacles we overcome is we built this on-demand, like, Uber-like model for software engineering tutoring, where you can literally do a tutoring call 24 hours a day, and it works in exactly the time frame that is convenient for your life. And so those were kind of the things. I feel like I answered that question in a really different kind of way, but
So good, so good. I guess VeroSkills as a product is very new. It's live on the site. Go check it out at VeroSkills.com. But I'm curious, in this case, does the current platform match what you thought of 2.5, 3 years ago? Have there been major changes along the way?
Yeah, I would say the initial idea that I thought of 2, 3 years ago was actually pretty similar technically. Like, the initial idea I had in my head was pretty similar to what it's actually gotten to, and it is now like everything operates really well thanks to our friends at Paralect. But yeah, thumbs up there. But the initial idea is pretty similar. We've obviously added like some really cool like features that have just enhanced that initial idea. But the initial technical idea is pretty similar. The business model was the thing that we played around with to really, like, we had to reimagine that a little bit, because initially we were like, okay, how can we do this that makes it, the most affordable for students to come through, get this learning, get this education, and get hired. And so initially we were like, well, maybe we charge a student like $20 a month. Maybe we give it to them free, and then they like earn minutes a certain way. And then we realized, like, why are we thinking about the students even paying a very small amount? Why don't we say, hey, let's partner with corporations, let's partner with nonprofits that sponsor those students. And that way the student is the one that can get this training, be impacted in this huge way. And we're serving that nonprofits community, and we're also helping somebody get into this amazing career at the same time. So the business model is the thing that looks probably the most different from the initial idea. The soul of the business model is the same, but that's the thing that's evolved the most to really honestly make the company work and function.
Okay, that raises a new question from my side. I guess now would be a good time to clarify who can go on VeroSkills and learn. Do you need to be? Is there some qualification, as you mentioned, the partnerships that you have that are funding this?
Yeah. That's a great question to answer. It would help if I actually explain it, right? So in VeroSkills, our whole model is we're a mission-driven company. We want to change the game, change the narrative when it comes to the massive populations that live in poverty worldwide and don't have access to the types of higher education and the types of higher opportunities that they can get through that education to be able to get into a really good career. So we go about that by working through corporations. So predominantly NGOs, nonprofits. We say, hey, we know you serve the Red Cross, for instance. It could be a great example, right? We know you're serving, hundreds of millions of people worldwide, and there's a section of what you do to help individuals transition into a career that can be really beneficial. So what we say is, hey, sponsor a group of students from your community that can benefit from this type of career. And we're going to train them on the platform using our live tutoring and our all the technology that makes it really easy for a student to learn. And then we're going to put them through a 6-month path, get them hired, get them into the field, and connect them with corporations that are wanting to hire from a more diverse talent pool and wanting to make an impact through their hiring. So that's kind of the big thing. Like a lot of people don't realize, corporations actually, will give philanthropically to a lot of these communities that are struggling with poverty and just need help. And a lot of these nonprofits and NGOs that work in those communities. And so we go to those same corporations and we say, hey, great job for giving philanthropically. What if you could actually change someone's life? What if you could actually put them on a path where they're now out of poverty, they're now making a livable wage, and they're on a career path where they can make, incredible money, support themselves, support their family, and you're still able to find those really critical technical folks that you need inside your corporation. So that's kind of how it works. Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. Let's get into a little bit of the feedback you may have gotten from the investors. Last year in September on Twitter, you wrote that, quote, I've pitched to 100 plus VCs in the last 2 years. If your story lacks focus, VCs will lack interest. So I guess, what is the focus of VeroSkills that you're pitching, and have you succeeded in raising investments for it?
Yeah, great question. So we've raised $1,355,000 to date in seed funding, and we're actually currently in the process of raising a $3 million seed round, which we are actually getting pretty close to doing. So, but it's not finalized yet, but it's getting close. So I would say, so now that number of 100 is probably more like 175. But so, what I've realized in pitching, I used to think that when I'm getting on a call with an investor, or when I'm having a meeting with an investor, that my job was to try and give them every bit of information they could possibly even ask for, and just try to fill in every possible information gap for them before they even ask. And so, it would take me a long time to go through my pitch deck, because I would be spending a few minutes, 5 minutes on each pitch deck. What I realized is you have to really keep, you have to open up the imagination of the investor to want more and leave them wanting more by your pitch. So you need to, really just be able to tell the story in a focused enough way where it makes sense, right? Okay, we're attacking this huge problem. We're declaring war on poverty. Our mission is to end poverty, right? Okay, great. Now we've established that. And everybody's like, wow, that's a big problem, right? How is this joker going to solve that? So, and then you have to like explain how you're going to do that, but don't read them a manual. You're going to explain how you're doing that in maybe 20 seconds, maybe less. And then you're going on and you're moving through your deck and, going through the details. But it's less about trying to give them all the information they could ever ask for, because you and me are just like investors. If I sit here right now with you and I go for an hour explaining the technical aspects of everything with the platform, you'll walk away and you'll be like, Daniel, that guy is just way overboard, right? And like way in the weeds. And I maybe remember 2 minutes, right? What he went over, because now my brain is fried. Thanks a lot, Daniel. And that's how investors are too. So, and it's good for them to ask the majority of the questions. So, like being really focused on what you're going to say, to kind of summarize, being really focused on what you're going to say and really, really clearly establishing that problem, like right off the bat. Like it's got to be like, the main slide of our pitch deck, it starts out with, we are declaring war on poverty. Like, boom, hits you right off the bat. So, like, you have to be really obvious of what is this huge problem that you're tackling. And then try to very quickly explain your solution. And you can leave more on a slide, a pitch deck, but very quickly explain your solution and then, leave their questions ready to be answered, So don't try to give them the manual on your company, because that's not exciting. Me and you would be in a call and, if we spent an hour and I went through all the technical aspects, I'd be like, I don't know what that was. Maybe that guy had a good thing, but it wasn't exciting. So, I'm probably going to pass. Investors want to be excited.
Right on. Great advice. Thank you for that. Let's see. We've talked about the learners. We've talked about the funding. I guess there's a third group that I don't quite fully understand yet, and that is the tutors themselves. Who can be a tutor on VeroSkills? What do they gain from that experience?
Yeah. So really great question. So, every aspect of what we do is an impact-based platform. So, the companies that are engaging with us, they are engaged to make a greater impact, to move the needle in a way. The students that are engaged with us, they are the ones that are, being taken out of poverty and trained and put into this really great opportunity. The tutors are some of the most skilled software engineers in the world. So these are your folks that are working for companies like Google and Apple, Amazon. They're making great money already, right? Phenomenal money. But they join our platform not to really make a lot more money, but to make a difference. So oftentimes, as a software engineer, you're already training somebody in your side time. You're already helping a friend, or somebody's asked you to mentor them, in software engineering. And a lot of times software engineers don't have like a good outlet to do that, because it just it's not always convenient to like go drive somewhere and try to handle that. And so it's just hard to kind of get that scheduled. And so what we did is we reached out to about 150,000 different software engineers on LinkedIn, and we sent literally 150,000 like direct messages, of which I think I sent 80,000 personally, which was a horrible task to do. but don't recommend it for anyone. But we sent out these messages and we said, hey, we see based upon your experience, your skills, that you're the type of software engineer we would want tutoring our students on our platform. This is what we're doing. We're changing lives. We're lifting people out of poverty and training them in these skills. And we would like to invite you to become a tutor on our platform to earn a little bit of side money, right? It's not going to be your Google money, but it's going to be a little bit of side money. And you're actually doing something that's really impactful, really powerful at the same time. And so number one reason our tutors join is to make an impact and a difference. And the fact that they make a little bit of money while they're doing it is kind of just gravy to the impact core reason of why they're there.
Very cool. That makes a lot of sense. And that LinkedIn campaign sounds painful, but I guess it was worth it in the end, right?
Yeah, you have to. I think it's the Paul Graham from Y Combinator. I think he was the one that said this, that in the early days of a startup, you have to do things that don't scale to be able to get to scale. And so I'm a big believer in that. Like you have to do the absolute worst miserable work, like to make it work until it does work. Right. So yeah, it was horrible, but it worked.
Awesome. Well, you are the second founder I've had on the show from Birmingham, Alabama. And so I'm curious, how did you find your way to partnership with Paralect?
Yeah, that's amazing. Birmingham must be getting on the map somehow. Finally, our big moment. This is happening. Yeah. So a friend of mine, a local founder here in Birmingham, a gentleman named Shagan, we had actually worked with you all at Paralect before, and has been quite successsul. He worked with you all through the whole journey and then sold his company for $1.2 billion. So I we were building our our platform, and it just felt like everything that could go wrong with the platform did go wrong. Like we didn't have any real organization to how we were doing software releases, and there wasn't a really good QA plan. So I would find myself going in and like QA-ing every release and finding 100 things that were wrong, and it just wasn't working out well, quite honestly. And it was taking up the majority of my time that I could have been on bringing on clients, bringing on investors, and it's just not a great thing to be in. So when Shagan gave his recommendation, being that it came from him, a founder that sold his company for $1.2 billion, that was like, okay, that's a really good indicator that this is a team I should talk to. And then when talking to you guys, and just interacting with you all, like it became obvious, like, instantly why, Paralect is so different from just another company that's coming in and taking on the software. So, so that's how I discovered you all. But hopefully many more Birmingham founders go your way.
Yeah, very cool. And Shagan has started, since the exit he's started the Harmony Venture Labs, and we've partnered with several of those founders that they've launched so far, and we're very happy to continue that. Obviously, it's a great group to work with due to their success and the continuing trust in what we do from our side. So it's a great partnership. So I'm curious then, were there any other aspects that you were looking for in terms of development partner? You mentioned that things weren't going well. So can you describe sort of the setup you had before? Were you working with a small in-house engineering team? Were you trying to do it all just yourself? What was going on?
Yeah, that's it's a really good thing that I think founders early stage founders, especially if you're like about to start your company or you're like thinking about putting together a team, it's really something to understand. And hopefully, founders can learn from my massive mistakes in this area. So, I think the first idea you have as a founder, once you get a little bit of funding or you kind of get to that point where you're like, okay, I'm going to go build this product now, is you think, okay, I have to go out and I have to hire a software engineer. I have to find a developer, right? And then I'm going to get that developer, maybe I'll get a few developers, and we'll start building out the platform because that makes sense, right? Developers code and I need coders and, we'll build out the platform. But running a software team is running a software team well is a very organized, meticulous process that has to be done really well by people that are experts in the field. And so that's one element of it. And then the second element of it is if you hire somebody that's used to working for Chase Bank, right? Or Bank of America, right? And that's the kind of projects they're working with. And then they come and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to focus on your startup, right? They have no understanding of how a startup functions, how the release cycles need to happen, the urgency that's always on a founder to be able to perform and like get the next release out. Like they just don't have any clue. So like my advice to founders would be, if before they go out and hire a bunch of developers, is you need to find a team like Paralect that understands startups. Like that's what Paralect is so different with, that was different than any other team I worked with. I've probably worked with about 15 different development companies over the years, including running my own at one point. And so what Paralect does infinitely better than I did and any one of those companies done is they understand the DNA of startups and how startups function. And then they build really meticulous, really well thought out software around that kind of thinking and methodology. And that is very, very unique. And will save you as a founder so much time, so much energy, because it really, as a founder, you need to be spending the most of your time, like getting your customers, like figuring out, where you're going to get funding from. Because you learned from me that I'm 175 meetings deep, right? And that's where I've gotten funding from. So it takes a long time to get 175 meetings. That's where you need to spend your energy. And it's a huge energy suck when you have software consuming all of that.
All right. Maybe it would be useful here to give a little bit of a timeline. So how long had you been trying to develop VeroSkills outside of Paralect before you found us? And then what did that change time frame look like?
Yeah, so March of 2021 was when we started developing the platform. And I believe we've been working with Paralect since December or November, maybe November of last year, something like that. I think, yeah, sounds about right. We had been in kind of loose conversation before that, but by the time we actually got everything together and started working, it was about, I think, November of last year. So that entire time, which is a lot longer that we spent beforehand doing the code on our own, we had two engineers that were working for us that, were also working multiple other jobs at the same time. And so we realized after a few months, our output was so low, we weren't getting anything done. And And then, we would ship software out and it would have, 100 bugs, and there was no clear way of how to like get ahead of that. And so, we were able to ship software, but the software that we were shipping wasn't very usable, and it wasn't very well planned from a release standpoint. Like when it was being released and how it was being released was just very poorly done. And so it was like in the last, few months before even working with Paralect, we had like gotten to where we were at least not like completely grounding and, not able to stay afloat, but we're still just not doing it the way it needed to be done in any capacity. And so when the Paralect team came on board, which is really, this is exactly how it happened. When the Paralect team came on board, it was literally in about a 3-week time, they were like, oh my goodness, like everything is just working. Like things are just going better. Like it's just like, this is a feeling of like how it should feel. Like, the software is working, like things are being shipped. Like if we say, hey, over the next month, we're going to try to knock out 16 features. We actually do that. We actually ship 16 features. And that I think was just where it really changed for us. And to tell you anything, since December of last year, we've gone from $0 in revenue. December, we got our first 15,000 in revenue as a company, to now we're over $1 million annual recurring revenue yearly. So that's how important it is to have a good partner. Like that's the difference, because I know for a fact, if we were back there with our old team of like a couple of in-house engineers that were just like flinging code, right? We would not be where we are today. We'd probably not be in business, quite frankly, because we had to start relying on sales to survive. So yeah.
All right, that's great to hear. I want to dig into the early days of that partnership, though, just a little bit more. Just so
Yeah.
If there are any other founders in a similar situation, they might know what to expect when they kick things off with Paralect. So what were some of the decisions that were made very early on when you started working with the Paralect team? Was it like, we need to throw out huge chunks of the product and build from scratch? Was it, we need to tackle bugs first? What did that look like? Because I haven't been privy to this process. But...
Yeah, so there was a lot of just like cleaning up the house that needed to be done, so there was no real or clear organization to how we were releasing. So we were essentially just, we would finish a feature and ship it. And it was supposed to be QA'd by the engineer that was building it. But I don't know if you've ever worked with engineers. You obviously have. Engineers QAing their own work sometimes it just doesn't really happen. It's like a nice idea. So there was like that kind of thing. There wasn't any order going on to how stuff was being shipped. And so I think the biggest thing was when we started with Paralect is we essentially just like really studied what was going on for about a few days a week. We tried to get a healthy understanding of, okay, this is how things are being released. This is where the platform stands. These are the issues that need to be tackled. And then was really figuring out a good plan that we wanted to go after and take care of, or go after and follow. And that was really the big thing that we initially did. And I think the thing, this working with other software teams before, other software companies before. The thing that I noticed immediately with the folks at Paralect and our team was they would actually think about improvements before I did oftentimes. So I've never experienced that with any other team I've worked with. So they would catch like, oh, a user is noticing this problem. We saw that a user was having this trouble with a problem, and we went ahead and implemented a fix already. Like, we've added a solution in place. And usually how you're engaging with a software team is you have to tell them every single thing they're going to do and work on, and they just ship it. And they're not thinking through your company. They're not thinking through how are your users interacting, what is best for the platform that's really going to help. You have to be that person as, oftentimes as the founder, Paralect is they are your team in the company. They feel like they're co-founders with, that's how it feels. We're co-founders with Paralect in this. That's how it feels. And they're thinking through ideas oftentimes before I'm thinking through the improvements that need to happen, and they're going and implementing them. And so that was initially something that just totally surprised me, that I wasn't even expecting, because I was expecting a good team. Shagan's recommendation is gold, right? So I was expecting a really good team, but the way that the team thought, and the way that it felt like, oh my goodness, they care just as much about the products as I do. They're thinking through the problems and the solutions. That was huge. And it just saves you, as a founder, it saves you so much mental energy to have that. Because if you're constantly consumed, you're living in this world of anxiety of oh, I have to remember the 100 problems that are going on wrong with the platform because nobody else cares. That's a horrible place to operate for us as a founder. And that's something that's different with Paralect.
Amazing to hear that. Yeah. And I'm sure Alexander and the whole team will be happy to hear that as well. We're going to put together, part of this interview will be put together into a case study of what the partnership has looked like and what we've built together. So I'm excited to see that from your perspective and from theirs as well. So I guess besides the revenue coming in, were there any other key results of the partnership to date?
Yeah. Well, one, we have a working platform. So right off the bat, the platform's working. Yeah. Oh man. We have a real product. So yeah, it's a cool thing. I wake up every single morning at 5 a.m. And usually one of the very first things I do is I'll go through the calls that are happening between students and tutors every day, just to kind of stay very close to the product. And we're now having hundreds of calls happening where tutors are helping students solve these problems, and where tutors are actually helping students network. They're telling them hey, I'll help you find a job when this is all done. And we've created this really cool thing, and being able to see that live and working as it was imagined, I could have never done without Paralect. So that milestone one, we have this amazing product that's working, that for a second I didn't know would ever get off the ground, just due to all the obstacles and challenges we face. But then I would say the thing that Paralect does so incredibly well is they understand you're a startup, and you're having to hit certain milestones to do things, right? So you're having to hit certain milestones to bring on customers. You're having to hit certain milestones to bring on students. You're having to hit certain milestones to bring on investors. So the way that Paralect has partnered with me to think about the product has been from that viewpoint, not just hey, Daniel, what's a really cool product you want to build? And we'll do it as long as you have money. It's like, hey, what is the metric that's going to make you successful? Like, how do we need to build this to have the kind of reporting, the kind of KPIs behind students and tutors that customers and investors will want to have before they will write you a really big check. And that's literally a conversation I have daily with, Alexandra and everybody kind of on the Paralect team is like, okay, hey, what are we doing to kind of hit these milestones you have inside the platform that are focused on things like, reporting statistics that we've built in, like really detailed reporting on how are the students engaging with the tutors? How are the tutors, how active are the tutors being on the platform? How many, admins from the nonprofit log on and engage with their cohort? Just simple things like that, that are really important from the investment side to be able to secure more capital. And that's a game changer right now because I think it's something like 97% of all venture capital, I could be wrong on this statistic, but it's a huge number, has dried up. It's a crazy time to raise capital. Now there's a ton of dry powder. There's literally billions of dollars of venture capital sitting on the sidelines. But what does that tell you? Investors are super scared right now, and they're not wanting to easily depart from their cash. So what do you have to do? You have to take away all their possible objections. You have to show them the data. You have to show them the traction. And if you don't have a team like Paralect, you're probably screwed. Truth be told. And I'm not paid to say this. I'm really just, really just passionate about this. Yeah. It's critical.
Yeah, I guess the other option is just to change your domain name to .ai, and then you get
.ai.
You get the money you need. You've described a lot of amazing things about the partnership between VeroSkills and Paralect so far. But my last question in regards to our team here is, what is one thing you would tell a founder about Paralect that they might not find on our website or now on Eager's Twitter feed?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Which is a 24/7 a day feed that he's always engaged with, which is amazing. Mad respect to his feed. So I would say, oftentimes, every company says, every company that brands themselves well, and I think Paralect brands themselves in a really unique way to get the attention of founders from their perspectives. But every company says, we're great, hire us. We're doing, we'll do a great job for you. We get you, right? And in my experience with working with about 15 different groups over the course of my career with tons of different applications, is that there is a real difference between, a team like Paralect that says, we understand that for you to be successful, our success is tied to your success. So we are going to operate from an entrepreneurial perspective. Everybody on the team, this is something you want to find on the website. Everybody on the Paralect team is like an entrepreneur. Everybody feels like an entrepreneur on the Paralect team, which is a very different understanding and perspective than most anybody you're going to engage with. Because if you're going to help founders, right, achieve this monumental, massive challenge of pulling this company out of thin air, out of the earth, right, and making it be something that not only people pay for, but is worth millions, tens of millions of dollars. If you're going to do that, you have to have people that get you and understand you to help you do that and help you achieve that. And I think that's the game changer with Paralect. They operate so entrepreneurial, and the team and everybody on the team is wired like a startup founder. And I think, if I was a startup founder, and I was choosing between two companies that did the same thing, but one was full of 10 entrepreneurs who built products like yours every single day and worked with founders, and they're all entrepreneurs themselves, with that kind of mindset and the way that they operate, I would 1 billion% go with that team. So I think that's probably, there's a long list of other phenomenal things, but that probably is the biggest thing that like you wouldn't find on the website. Is this is a team of crazy entrepreneurs that build incredible software in a meticulous way that are now joining your team. And what does that mean for you? It's just going to supercharge your team.
Very cool. We're trying to share that story as best we can in an appealing way. So yeah, we're taking steps towards that for sure. Let's stick with Twitter for a minute. Because it told me that you have had a profile there since 2009, but you don't seem to tweet very often. What do you think about this whole build in public movement there? Do you think it's important for founders to have a presence there or on some other it could be LinkedIn, it could be somewhere else? And maybe follow up to that would be, how has your use of it changed over time?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, I've been a long time Twitter user. I can't remember when Twitter first came out. Was it 2008? Do you know? Do you remember?
I don't.
It was a long time ago, but yeah. So I've been on it for a long time. But so I have two thoughts on it. The build in public thing is phenomenal. That's a really great thing. So, and it's something I really need to do better at, is like posting more often, just like not overthinking it. But there's another thought behind it, which the second thought is founders get stuck in this idea that, okay, let's say I'm building a fintech company, right? And I should be posting more often and I'm telling my story, right? They start like posting out blog articles about fintech, or, hey, we wrote a blog article challenging, crypto 1.1's merge with, yet nobody cares, right? It's horrible content. So if you have, if you are going to commit to it and do it, and I think there has to be a buffer of like founders have to understand that like, they have to do that on top of everything else they're doing. And sometimes, that like if you can't manage doing that on top of everything else well, then maybe just focus on doing the things that matter really well. But I think you should rise to the occasion. Like, and I'm telling myself this, right? So this is a current lesson for Daniel. Rise to the occasion, post more, tell your story, tell your daily interactions that's happening with customers, students, me and you. We just had this podcast, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I should do. But tell the story. Don't throw out content because you think like, our corporate strategy is we're going to just tell people, what's happening in the industry, or we're going to post about some boring article. People care about people's stories, and content that's interesting is engaging content. And we live in a world where, you got a 3-second attention span. So it's probably less than that. If I'm going to read a tweet, it's got to get me in like a nanosecond, right? And so like build in public, but do it well. And don't take this approach of, okay, now I'm going to find every boring blog article, or I'm going to write an article on my defense of the latest technology or something, like create interesting content that's digestible and tell your story. Just, be a citizen journalist for yourself. What's happening, what's interesting about that. That would be my lesson. And, then my lesson that I need to follow better. So I engage, like I use Twitter probably the most these days for finding venture capitalists to engage with. And Twitter is the best platform in the world for finding venture capitalists, because you can literally find a venture capitalist and start a direct conversation back and forth with a like, there's no other platform in the world where you can really have that level of interaction. And you can also find out, okay, is this somebody that's like, do they have a fund that's liquid right now? Or are they going to spend an hour of your time just so they can boost up their ego? And then just say, oh, sorry, we're going to pass because, this doesn't fit our thesis, when really they just don't have cash. Yeah, longer answer than you wanted, but
that's a great perspective. Let's see. I wanted to dig in a little bit to things that you've learned along your journey, because we have attracted a lot of early stage founders into the Nano community, and that's what Igor's been working on a lot with the rest of the team here. So I wonder if you could share some of your wisdom and insights with them around 3 areas when it comes to building startups. First, it is pre-product, the problem and idea validation stage. Do you have any golden nuggets for them at that point?
Yeah, I really, really great question. So, and I always try to take this question from like how I learned this, because my personality is I learn things the absolute hardest way, by like going through the brick wall multiple times and then realizing like maybe go through a door, not a brick wall, right? So, for me, when you're in the pre-revenue, pre-product kind of stage, what you're trying to do is you're trying to determine a few things. So you have a feeling, do you have a like gut feeling that something is really missing that you need to build, right? Like I have a feeling. And then what validates that feeling for you? Is it just a feeling, right? Like, did I just have this really great feeling that, oh, I feel like this would work? Or do you have some kind of unique perspective, some kind of unique experience that validates that feeling? Like, I'm going to build an app to help students, study better. And over the last 4 years of studying in study groups with, 200 different students, I've always noticed the same thing. That's a really validated feeling. But if you just have this idea from the standpoint of like, oh, I feel like this is missing, I feel like this would be incredible, I feel like it would be the next Facebook, there's no validation. There's nothing that tells you that's true besides a really strong feeling. And as an entrepreneur, you can get those kind of ideas and feelings all the time. Right. So what validates it? What validates it to be true? And then focus more on the business before you start focusing on the tech, right? Because one thing you can spend so much time on is imagining the products that will come, right? Like let's build out this really cool technology that can do all these things. And, oh, wouldn't it be cool if AI was doing this on the platform? Or wouldn't it be? And you can do all that before even ever talking to a customer. And then you start talking to customers and the customer will be like, well, that's cool, but we never use it because we have these 3 other things that do all of that already. And so you're a startup, so why would we use you over Microsoft? Try to, because you can spend a long time building product that nobody uses and building technology that nobody uses. So like focus, validate your gut feelings, your assumptions, validate those ideas that you feel really strongly about, and then spend time on what is the business. before you spend too much time on what is the tech here, what happens on the technology side that, is going to be so cool. Because the technology side has to be done right. But at the end of the day, like I made this mistake before. I would like build an app, put it out on the app store and think like, oh, this is going to get 1 million downloads, and then it can get no downloads. And I'd be like, why is this? Why didn't nobody download my app? I'm really insulted, right? Did I not do a marketing right? And nobody wanted that kind of an app, and, it just wasn't something that was needed or wanted. And I spent time in my head thinking like, this is something really great and wonderful, but I didn't validate it with anybody else. So, like spending time, getting closest to the pain, right? So if you're building an app for students and study groups, spend, a long time talking to students, and interviewing them before you start building. And then think about, what is that business? Don't like have this idea of like, okay, we're going to figure out the business model later. Like, we'll start free and then eventually it will just be a billion downloads and we'll sell advertising somehow or something. Like, what is the business? How does that make money? Like, because if the economics are sound, that's the thing that's going to make you win in today's day and age, especially with venture capital being so hard to get. Like, if you have a business that's generating cash and if people are actually paying you for it because there's a real business model that makes sense, then you're going to attract investors that want to invest in you. But if you just have this tech that you think is cool, it's not validated, nobody cares.
All right. I just want to put a pin in that generate revenue versus attract investors thing and come back to it a little bit later.
Yeah.
Made me think of another question. But okay, so you described a lot there, but let's move on to MVP development and go to market. So what are some thoughts there?
Yeah. So, MVP and go to market. So, in my mind, you need enough capital. So a few thoughts. One, if you're somebody that can build your own MVP or like put together an MVP in Figma and get it working, that way, and you're able to raise enough venture capital to like then build out that MVP into like a fully functioning MVP, that's really great. But the MVP, you want to try and get to an MVP as quickly as you can so you can get it out there and start like seeing how it works and functions. So this is why choosing your strategy for who is building your MVP or how is it being built is so critical, because if you think like if you spend a year building out an MVP or 6 months even building out an MVP and then you finally get it out there and you're going to learn so much when you get it out into the market and into the world that's the true testing ground. So, I would say like your goal is to like do it in the highest quality in the fastest amount of time with the smallest budget, which are 3 very hard things to do. But there's so much technology now that can help us to create an MVP quickly. Don't add in every dream feature you want to have in your MVP. Like if you have a product roadmap that's huge, like focus on 2 to 3 things, right? Or maybe even 1 thing that you want to do really well in the MVP that shows the fundamentals of how this works, and you can start getting users and people testing it out. And it does maybe that 1 thing really well. Focus on that, get it out the door, because once you start getting traction and you raise some seed capital to to really start pursuing that, then you can start adding in those other features and doing those things. But you will never get off the ground if your MVP is this thing that has 50 features and have to do all these really neat, cool technical things. So, and go-to-market strategy, this is a huge thing for founders to keep in mind. Do not go and say, okay, I'm going to go and do this marketing campaign that I'm not sure if it will work or not, right? Like, I'm going to go do Google AdWords, right? And I'm going to spend $5,000 on Google AdWords to get downloads for my app. And you've never, like, my first question would be, are you a Google AdWords expert? Have you done 10 years of Google AdWords campaigns? And so you know that if you spend $5,000, you're going to like really confidently get a ton of downloads? Or is it just a test? Because that's a really, unwise way to test out, getting users. What I would do, is go around physically to 100 different locations with an iPad or your phone and sign up users. Say, hey, look, check out this app. Set up a booth. You have to be if you want to make it, you got to be really crazy to make it as an entrepreneur. And if you think, oh, I'm going to do the safe way, I'm going to create this little Facebook marketing campaign, you're going to be out of money and you're not going to have any traction and investors won't want to do anything with you. So what you need to do is you got to hustle, and you got to out hustle everybody else. And you got to go out there into the market and you got to say, okay, where are the physical places where I'm going to sign up 100 users? Where, who are my friends that can get me close to these users? So like, for instance, I've spent $0 on marketing to get to $1 million in annual reoccurring revenue, in 7 months. And the reason I did that is I literally went through every single connection I had on LinkedIn, every single contact in my phone. And I said, okay, here's 25 people we made a list, I think, of 50 or so people that can connect me to nonprofits that they might sit on the board of, or they might have given to, or they might be friends with, they might work at. They're going to connect me to a nonprofit that I can set up a meeting with and sell. That was our marketing campaign. And people think about marketing in this standpoint, okay, I got to do ads now, or I got to, I have to create this elaborate, marketing plan. I got to spend $10,000 to do it. You don't know anything yet, as a founder with what is going to work with your product. And so if you don't know what is going to work, how can you market for that? Like if you're like, okay, I'm going to market a product that I don't know how users are going to react to, and I'm going to say, that's my shot for being successful. That's going to get me the traction I need. That's like, I mean, you have worse odds with that than gambling, and you're a bad gambler. Like, create the traction yourself. Like, go out there and hustle, because that's what you can control. You can control going to 100 different locations and signing up users, annoying the hell out of your friends by texting and calling them, emailing them to get them to make introductions to nonprofits. You can control that. What you can't control is, I'm going to spend $5,000 on Google AdWords. Users may or may not sign up for a call, and I just don't know what will happen. That's what you can't control. So that would be my advice with go-to-market. It's a critical stage. I'm kind of surviving, quite honestly.
Yeah. Good insights. Thank you for that. All right. You've got the product out there. It's launched. What do you do next?
Yeah. So our plan is to scale what we're doing. We want this to be, are you saying it's for founders?
Either direction you want to take.
Either or. Okay, I'll try to answer both quickly. So, our goal is we want to scale this now. It's working. People are enjoying it. And like, I would say for founders, like, your goal is to get to the point where like users are using the platform, things are stable, and like people are paying you, right? And it's working. It's working as intended. Like, people are paying you. They enjoy the experience. There's always, you're going to improve 100 things along the journey every year, but it's to a point of stability where it's like, okay, now if I, load up the vending machine, and I put $1 in, it's gonna, give me a piece of candy, right? So like, that's the point you want the company to be at. You don't want it to be, spitting out, your money every time or something like that. Horrible analogy. But, you want to focus on getting it to that point and then being able to scale it. And so that's usually the time where investors will engage the most with you, because you have the traction, everything's working, and it's, it's at a very investable stage. The vending machine is working. So now if I'm an investor, I'm like, if I give you $50 and you load up the vending machine with candy, I know that I'm going to be able to make those sales, right? I know that I'm going to have the return from the candy sold in the vending machine. So like, that's kind of where we're at right now as a company. And it's taken 2.5 years for us to get here. So it's been like, I don't want anybody to think like, oh, this was an amazing, like, pain-free journey of us getting to this point.
Overnight success.
Yeah. Overnight success of getting to this point. It was like, Elon Musk had a quote of like, starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss, and simultaneously. And that is probably the most true quote I've ever heard. And it's going to be that for everybody. But if you can get there, then that's where investors will engage with you. And that's why we have, like, right now, I've done 175 pitches roundabout over the last 2.5 years just for this company. And in the early days, it was like every investor I engaged with, they were telling me, if I got the call at all, they would be telling me how I needed to do the business completely differently and how it was a horrible idea and like everything under the sun. Now, when I'm engaging with investors, it's like they're excited too. I'm not having to try and get them excited, right? Like, they're excited to be on the call. And that's a very different place. It's a real place you can get to as a founder. So you just have to be, willing to get there and have the grit, because it's going to take a lot of grit to get there.
Right on. Let's stick with the investment topic just for a second longer, and then we'll start to wrap up. You mentioned several times how hard it is to raise funds now, but now that you sort of passed that threshold, investors are excited about it. I'm curious on your philosophy here, because bootstrapping seems like it's becoming more popular. Founders are talking about, making calm companies that aren't like venture scale growth so they can retain more equity and just have more control over what the company does. I'm curious about your thoughts on this and what advice you would give to other founders. Focus on raising no matter how hard it seems. Focus on accelerators early to sort of gain some traction. Where do you sit with this?
Yeah. So, like, I think one, in a sense, you have to like bootstrap or raise like friends and family money to do what you need to do, to to be able to get to the point where you're interesting even to accelerators. Accelerators are an awesome avenue, because the thing about what accelerators are so cool is you automatically have a community of people that know investors, that know all the obstacles and challenges. Like, they're usually pretty knowledgeable people who can guide you. And so you're like, you're going through this intensive process. So I think accelerators are phenomenal because it's essentially connecting you to a network greater than you have that is also interested in doing the things you're wanting to do. So that's going to help you raise capital. It's going to help you do a lot. But so accelerators are really good. But you're probably not going to get much traction if you just have an idea and you're going. I mean, there's some accelerators probably that would take you, but like, I think you should really focus on like getting that MVP, getting that thing built first that is cool, and having something unique about it, that like Founder University with Jason Calacanis. He does this thing called Founder University where he has tons of entrepreneurs come through and they kind of build something, and their whole goal is to like get one customer or get two customers using it and paying anything, like could be 25 cents, but they're in there and they're testing it out, and that says something. That's a signal. So like having anything like that at all that you can get into an accelerator with is great. To answer your question more squarely, I would say, bootstrapping is one way of doing it, and venture is another way of doing it. The cool thing about venture capital, if you can get it, it's become incredibly hard to get now. So you in a sense, you have to take the mentality of that I'm going to build this company like I'm bootstrapping it in order to attract venture capital. Because if you have this mentality that, okay, I just need 250 grand and I'm going to be able to get to customers, right? If you have that mentality now, it just won't work. Or if I have 250 grand, I can go out and build an MVP. I'll hire 2 salespeople and we'll go that route. That's just not going to work. So you have to, in a sense, bootstrap, raise a little money from your friends and family, whatever you need to do to get some metric of traction before you can even get to venture capital. So you have to have the mentality of a bootstrapped founder when you're going out and pursuing that direction, in order to kind of get the success you're after, in my opinion. And then I think, staying bootstrapped versus not, my whole goal is, with what I'm doing, is that I am building something that, can affect the world in a positive way, in a big way, right? And I'm not doing it to, I don't want to build VeroSkills to help, 100 people get into their next best opportunity. I want to build VeroSkills to help 1 billion people get into their next opportunity. So it's really, what do you want as a founder? I would say that is maybe answer that question for yourself. Are you wanting to do something that affects the world in a big way, or are you wanting to do something that maybe you'll get there eventually where it will be affecting the world in a big way, but it's going to be a slow, very, very slow journey. And there's some founders that are really, content in being a solopreneur, and doing it, one-person company. There's a lot of stuff out there now about founders wanting to run a one-person company. So there's people that want that, but for me personally, I I want to build something that I'm excited about that changes the world in a big way. And venture capital for me is a way for me to be able to do that, see that vision happen. But my warning with that is you have to think and act like a bootstrapped founder for a while in order to get the interest of venture capital. So that would be my thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And I guess let's talk a little bit about that billion people then. Who should be checking out VeroSkills right now and signing up either as a mentor or a learner?
Yeah. So anybody that is interested in, if you're a student or like if you're somebody that wants to get into the field and you are in an area that is economically, hit, right? It's a harder hit economic area, or maybe a community, or maybe just a geographic location. It's hard for people to break into tech in that area. Go to the VeroSkills.com/apply and apply to come through as a student. And then if you're a good fit, we can pair you with a nonprofit that would sponsor you to come through and train. And then obviously, if you're a nonprofit that serves a community of individuals that can benefit from this economic opportunity that technology jobs offer, which can be, starting salary 60 all the way up to 100,000 a year at the end of our training, and that could benefit your community, then then reach out to us through our website, and we want to talk to you about what is building a cohort for your community look like, and can it help? And then as a tutor, if you're a skilled software engineer, you're somebody that's skilled in AI, and you're somebody that wants to give back and you want to impact the next generation of software engineers and technically minded folks, this is a great way to do that and to make some side hustle money at the same time. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, I hope you start reaching those communities that you're looking for and continue to, I guess, reach those communities as you grow and scale up VeroSkills. So are there any new features or anything really cool that you'd like to tell people about that's coming out soon?
Yeah. So I think the things I'm most excited about is all of the features that we're working on the AI side of the platform. So we've built into the platform different AI technologies already that measure student skills through like GitHub and kind of measure where they're at skill wise. But we have some really cool features that are going to help students learn and students get hired better, and then help the students learn. So one of the things that on the AI side that we're coming out with is, sometimes tutors or sometimes students forget that the fastest and best way for them to learn is to take advantage of the tutoring calls as much as possible. So we're building in an AI, tutor buddy, right, type equivalent, where it's not actually doing the tutoring, but it's pointing them towards, it's kind of like their mentor, AI mentor, I guess is the best word, to be there to say when they're coding, hey, I noticed you've been struggling with this code for a while. Go ahead and book that tutoring call because you're going to be able to get that question solved. And, hey, I noticed that this line of HTML, you've done it wrong 3 times. Go ahead and schedule that tutoring call so you can learn and get this problem solved. There's also a lot of unique aspects because we have hundreds of hours of tutoring and student calls that happen on the platform. we're able to measure things that are very unique and different using AI that no other platform can really offer on the recruitment side. So like communication skills, strengths and weaknesses, things like that like you couldn't ever have those insights unless you did 4 or 5 interviews with a potential candidate. Like, because we're doing hundreds of hours of tutoring calls and we have AI measuring certain things on those calls, that is something that is going to help our students and tutors train better and get hired better. So those are some of the things I'm most excited about. Is we have about 4 or 5 pretty big features on the AI side that are working with some of the AI we already built into the platform, but are kind of gonna be like a game changer, I feel like. So that's what I'm excited about.
Very cool. All right, let's stick with AI for a hot second, and I'll give my devil's advocate view. If I was in the place of a student, let's say in my former life, I was working at a restaurant as a cook. It didn't pay very well. I look around and I say, look, I need to learn how to code. I'll get a better job. I'll have a better life, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But I look around now and I say, look, AI is going to be doing all this low-level coding in the next couple years. It's going to take me 6, 10, 12 months to learn enough. And by then, those jobs that are paying well now might be gone. AI is doing it. What's your take on that situation? Why should I still sign up and not stick to cooking?
Yeah, great. I saw that on your LinkedIn profile. I was like, oh, wow. Chefs are some of the most interesting people. I love the question. It's the question everybody is asking right now. It's like, hey, listen, ChatGPT-4, is spitting out better code than I'm never going to learn in 12 months. Why am I going to get into this if it's going to be replaced, right? So it's the kind of classic thing that happens with great technologies that come out, right? And kind of change the game. One of the great examples in recent history was software engineers, 2010, maybe a little earlier, we're starting to really use source control, things like GitHub, GitLab, and starting to use that to store their code online, to push commits and to be able to collaborate with team members on the code that they were working on. Well, within a very short amount of time, every company said, hey, the only kind of engineers we're going to hire are engineers that know how to use source control really well. And there was all of these software engineers that were these old school, Lone Ranger type software engineers that said, no, I'm gonna do things the way I've always done them. I'm gonna write code, in an isolated vacuum, and that's just what's gonna happen. And I'm not gonna learn how to do this. And they didn't find jobs. They were the ones that were not able to get hired after their current job was not a thing anymore. So the cool thing about AI is, yes, it is going to eliminate millions of jobs in the tech world. Let's just be honest with that. But it's going to create so many more jobs that we've not even possibly imagined yet, that are going to be needing people that understand code and understanding how to work with the technology of AI very well to be able to do the job. And currently there's nobody that knows that really, right? Because it's such a new technology, right? So who are those people going to be? Like AI trust and safety, right? Like we've already seen so much in the news, like, ChatGPT-4, is it biased? Is it, AGI? Is it going to, turn into the Terminator and destroy humanity as we know it. That's a huge issue. That thing alone, that one subject, AI trust and safety, is going to create tens of millions of jobs. Just that alone. And then just in AI, there's so much more. And so am I going to hire an AI trust and safety person that doesn't understand coding? Absolutely not. I'm going to hire an AI trust and safety person that not only understands coding, but understands how to work with artificial intelligence, understands machine learning, understands all of these things. So how it's changed with how we train software engineers is it's not anymore okay to train a software engineer like they were even trained in 2020, right? Where you can learn JavaScript, HTML, CSS, whatever the languages are to build websites, and then you're good. You need to know how to use ChatGPT-4. You have to understand how language models work. You have to understand how to be, a cyborg software engineer that's using, this great power to do things, because otherwise you're not going to be able to take advantage of this huge wave. I think it was Goldman Sachs or one of those major kind of investment firms predicted that AI is going to create upwards of 90 million jobs in the next few years, next decade it could have been. But guess what? Those 90 million jobs are not going to be made up of people that don't understand coding, and are not going to be made up of people that don't understand software. So that's where it will replace your front-end engineer that's just like creating websites and writing JavaScript. So that will be replaced in a large extent. But what's changing is the job itself due to the technology. And so now you have to be a master of this technology. And if you know the technology, you are the most in demand skill set out there, period. Because the whole world is trying to figure out how to use AI to their advantage. Every company in the world has 50 AI initiatives, and we're going to use AI. All those companies, and they don't understand it. So who are they going to hire? And so that's my thinking on it.
All right, ever the optimist, it seems. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I still believe that cooking is fun. Maybe I'll go back to the kitchen someday.
Yeah, cooking.
I think it's one of the last places where AI will take the job, because it's just kitchens are hell and technology just doesn't survive there.
Right. Cooking and childcare, I think, are like the two, it's going to be very difficult for AI to really take care of kids well. And it's just, I know this as having two small children. So yeah.
All right, let's land this plane then. Last question for you. What does success for you as a VeroSkills founder look like? And so what are you working towards? And given the right circumstances, how long do you think it will take to get there?
Really good question. I think, ultimately, I feel like, for me personally, success is tied to what this platform can do for people. What kind of impact can this platform have? And obviously, the bigger the company is and the more people it's serving, the most impact it can have. So, my goal would be that, tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of people a year are using VeroSkills to, be lifted out of poverty, put into a really amazing career, upskill, get into the career they've always wanted, be able to rapidly learn and get the skills they want in the fast-paced moving, society that we live in. So that would be my idea of success the most, is that this is a platform that's affecting change in a large way. And then, as far as the answer of like how long, I think it will take to get me there, the honest answer is I don't know, but I obviously I hope it would be, soon. I hope that, if everything worked out well within, a few years, this can really be getting places. I know from like a short-term perspective, there's, I would say by the end of the year, we probably will have like thousands of students on the platform learning. So I think that's cool from like just seeing like what's right in front of me. But I think it's really good as a founder, because I've gotten stuck in this loop before of like, oh, everything's going to work out here in 2 years. I just have to keep grinding. And then you get to 2 years and you're like, we're not there yet. 6 months from now, it will be there, and it's not. So I think it's really important to just like to be of the mindset that if you consistently keep pushing as hard as you can and keep grinding, that you will get there. And it might look different when you do, but success is going to be achieved by those who are most determined. I've known a lot of founders that, they lose so much hope after like their expectation in their head doesn't work out. And so I think it's just so important. It could take me 10 years to, achieve any kind of like, like any kind of accomplishment of that vision that I have for VeroSkills. It could take me 15 years. And that's the reality. Or it could take me 2. So like, I think if you have that mindset, I think you'll get there. And hopefully I do, right? But I think my chances are much better just if I keep grinding and going at it. And, hopefully we have another, podcast, update here in a couple of years, and I haven't gotten there, but, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to that day. Thank you so much, Daniel, for your time today. It's been an amazing conversation, amazing look into what created and what brought VeroSkills about and what you've built together with the team here at Paralect. So everyone go check out VeroSkills.com to learn more about the product and join the platform if it's a fit for you as a learner or a tutor. Daniel, thanks a million, man.
Absolutely, John. Thank you so much.
Have a great weekend.
You as well. Take care.